Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Bride of Dracula, The Goddess Next Door, and John Haynes team up to take on the Dark Vampire in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. One of my viewers wanted to know my thoughts about the film Sinners. Now, Sinners is a black vampire movie that came out last year and went on to become one of the most popular films at the box office and one of the top grossing films of 2025. And this film, directed by Ryan Coogler, is one that I believe takes the whole genre of black fantasy and black science fiction in a good direction, and it also takes the whole black cinema and takes it on a better road than the one it was on under the cabal of Oprah Winfrey, Lee Daniels, Tyler Perry, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, and Ice Cube, where the only thing they want to make are films that basically are what people call poverty corn, or films that basically show black women constantly being abused by brute black men, or films that basically show black men in the streets selling drugs and committing crimes, like on shows like the show Power or The Wire, or basically show black people breathing brand new life into old stereotypes or seeing slave movies. Now, Sinners doesn't do any of that at all. No, Sinners is a very interesting film that basically shows us these black people who are in a town of black vampires, and is again a very unique and interesting film. A very unique, interesting film that takes the genre of black fantasy and black science fiction in a good direction. Now, when it comes down to black film, there has been a growing audience for fantasy and science fiction, and that's been shown to Hollywood ever since the blockbuster hit Black Panther hit theaters back in 2018. Now, in 2018, Hollywood basically was shown that there are black audiences that will come out in large numbers for fantasy and science fiction projects with the success of Black Panther. However, Hollywood racists don't want to capitalize on that audience because many of these white supremacists in Hollywood want people to imagine a world of fantasy and science fiction as one where white people are the ones in charge, and because they only want us to see a world of white people having power over things as related to fantasy, they basically deliberately tried to sabotage the entire genre of fantasy and science fiction with Oprah Winfrey's A Wrinkle in Time that came out in 2019, and wanted to use that film as an excuse to say that Black Panther was an aberration or an anomaly as related to its billion-dollar box office and being, again, the number one movie of 2018. They wanted to go out here and look to sabotage the genre of black fantasy and black science fiction in film. However, with the success of Sinners, we see that there is an audience of black people eager to go out here and eager to go see films that are fantasy and science fiction with black characters as the lead. That's what the film Sinners basically signifies to Hollywood, that Hollywood doesn't want to acknowledge. I mean, many of their biggest films as related to the genres of fantasy and science fiction were featuring black leads. I mean, if we look at the history of black film, I mean, Blade, which starred Wesley Snipes, basically revived the entire superhero movie genre after the failure of Batman and Robin in 1997 that led to the nail in the coffin for the superhero movie genre. It was Wesley Snipes who basically revived the entire genre of superhero movies that allowed us to get films like the X-Men movies of the 2000s, the Spider-Man movies of the 2000s, and other movies like Daredevil and Hulk, not to mention the Marvel Cinematic Universe None of that would have been possible had it not been for Wesley Snipes going out and making Blade. That movie basically, again, saved Hollywood because the only thing they are making these days are superhero movies, and the next level for Hollywood, as I see it, is black fantasy and black science fiction. That's where the direction is going for things, but many of the racists there don't want to see where that direction is going because they want white actors to be the face of fantasy and science fiction. Now, when it comes to Sinners, it basically shows that there is a core audience of foundational black Americans who are eager to go out here and see fantasy and science fiction films, and there's an eager audience of foundational black Americans ready to go buy tickets to see these movies, and a large growing audience of foundational black Americans out here looking to go see these movies. Now, the viewer tells me that they feel that Sinners was overhyped, but when it comes down to it, I don't really believe that this film was overhyped because Hollywood didn't go out of its way to promote this film at all. No, this film basically became popular because of the grassroots of foundational black Americans. I mean, this film basically became a hit because of the black audience that is eager to go out and see black fantasy and science fiction movies, and brothers and sisters have been chomping at the bit looking for the next fantasy or science fiction movie because most brothers and sisters want to see a larger world of characters. Unfortunately, Hollywood hasn't been eager to want to give us those type of films. No, they want black people to stay in the box that they feel is acceptable for white people, and that box basically is filled with hood movies, slave movies, poverty porn, and movies about black women being abused by pookie types, and that's the type of film they want to push as a black movie. No, they don't want us to see films that feature black characters as fantasy characters because they fear that black people will start to imagine themselves in a world all their own and not look to see the world through a white lens where they are in the background of the world and basically looking to follow behind the white people. That's what they want to see as related to black films. And again, the viewer tells me about a time in the early 1980s when the film industry was scared to touch black films, which I found to be quite ironic because it was black films that basically saved Hollywood. It was back in the 1970s, Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback that basically opened the door that kept Hollywood alive and created the blaxploitation era. But they had a couple of films that basically failed, like The Wiz and many others that they poured a lot of money into that failed. And then they wanted to say, oh, we don't want to make black movies. But it was always black movies that wound up saving many of these studios as related to them having financial issues. It was always black films like Melvin Van Peebles' Sweet Sweetback that opened the door and showed how there was an eager black audience ready to go out here and go to the movies, and Hollywood never wanted to capitalize on that audience like they are right now. I mean, right now, we see that the black fantasy is huge. We see that there's an audience ready to spend money to go out here and see films that feature black fantasy, like I write on the SJS Direct imprint on like with stories like I do in the Isis, Esteem, and John Haynes series. I mean, people are chomping at the bit looking for films that not only are a part of the horror genre like Sinners is, but they're looking for fantasy films like ones that feature supernatural elements like I have in books like I do, like The Temptation of John Haynes or Isis, Dark Incubus, and they're also looking for action and adventure in a superhero style like I feature in books like I write, like Isis, Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, and Isis, All That Glitters, and Esteem, Season of the Witch Girl. There's an audience
for these products. And again, black people ready to spend their money like they did with when Black Panther was out. There was a whole group of people ready to buy merchandise, practically to the point where Hasbro sold out of all their Black Panther toys in 2018. But sadly, Hollywood and corporate America don't value the black dollar, and as they don't value the black dollar, they're basically again on the brink of collapse, not understanding that there is a market for black product. Now, the viewer tells me that, again, there was a time in the early 80s where they weren't producing because of the failure of The Wiz, and they wanted to make, again, single films like Ragtime and The Color Purple, and make that the black film because they were wanting to play it safe. But all of Hollywood's growth has always been through the black community. If you look at Hollywood, again, I'm going to go back to the 1970s. Melvin Van Peebles basically saved Hollywood as it was dying due to all of the war movies and epic movies and biographies and other films that were not doing well. It was Melvin Van Peebles that opened the door. And then we had NBC, which was about to go out of business, and it was Bill Cosby that basically saved that network. And when it comes to Hollywood right now, again, Sinners was the biggest hit of the 2025, even doing better than Superman. And that's all because the black audience is, again, hungry for new material, hungry for fresh content. But the sad part is Hollywood these days, because of the consolidation due to the Telecom Act of 1996, isn't interested in reaching those black audiences. No, what they want to do is go out here and deny that those black audiences are the way they're going to be able to make money moving forward. And even worse, many of these billionaires like the Ellisons want to go out here and look to control the narrative, looking to make their media even whiter. I mean, David Ellison and his father, Larry Ellison, basically want to, again, be the billionaires who control the media, and they want to make a narrative where the media is mostly white, but that's not going to really work because the only thing that is going to save Hollywood are black audiences, because the black dollar has the highest value as related to entertainment, because black people basically go out here and create movies that can redefine the culture, and like Black Panther did. But many of these racists, again, don't want to do that because they think, oh, that's woke, when actually it's not woke at all. No, what these racists want to do is perpetuate white supremacy in their media, and they don't want to admit that black people are the ones that basically, again, go out here and make contributions to the culture, because Sinners did make a great contribution, like Ryan Coogler's Black Panther, and Ryan Coogler has basically, again, defined films for two decades, for the 2010s and the 2020s. I mean, Black Panther showed us there is a black audience, and now Sinners is showing us that black audience is ready for more. But sadly, Hollywood is just continuing to refuse to make these films. No, they want to sit here continuing to make either superhero movies or art house crap that nobody cares about. They don't want to go out here and look at the trends and look at the trend makers, because the trend makers have always been black. I mean, I look at the 1970s, I look at the 1980s. Again, it was always black people, again, going out here and defining entertainment. Even the 90s, again, Fox would not have been a fourth network had it not been for Keenen Ivory Wayans and A Living Color, or Martin Lawrence with Martin, or Malik Yoba and I forget what his name is, in New York Undercover, and Queen Latifah and Kim Fields in Living Single. I mean, every decade, if you looked at it, again, the growth in Hollywood came through the black community, first with Sweet Sweetback, then with The Cosby Show and the golden age of black cinema, with Spike Lee, and then the 90s with Fox and the WB and UPN. Again, all the growth of these networks and these movie studios came through the black community. And when it comes to black fantasy, this is not like the early 80s. Nope, it's not where you're going to try to make it where it's one film or one group of black actors you can push. That's what Hollywood found out in the 80s. Again, they were trying to go out here in the early 80s, pushing this whole thing with Ragtime or The Soldier Story, where they were going to push a handful of black actors and make them the face of black Hollywood. But the money, again, was in the black community, and they couldn't deny it after the success of The Cosby Show. That's when they started pouring money into black films like Spike Lee films and House Party and many other films. And that's where they saw where the money was. And again, the whole thing is it's not an overhyping. The black audience has always been core to Hollywood's business. The black audience is where the real money is. And sadly, Hollywood doesn't want to acknowledge the black audience. No, they don't want to touch black films because they don't want black people controlling the narrative. And because they don't want black people controlling the narrative, they don't want us to be the face of media. They don't want us to represent the media, but all of their gains basically came from black people, and that's something many of these executives in Hollywood, like the Ellisons, don't want to be the face. But Hollywood, again, would not be around had it not been for men like the late Melvin Van Peebles or Bill Cosby. No, we wouldn't even have a Hollywood because, again, if it wasn't for Bill Cosby or the late Melvin Van Peebles, we wouldn't have had Sweet Sweetback. We wouldn't have had the blaxploitation era. We wouldn't have had, again, the Cosby Show. And again, we wouldn't have had those things. And those projects, again, opened the door. And again, we see the door opening once again as related to fantasy and science fiction, where there's an audience for this type of material. And guys like me, they don't want to come to make the moguls. I mean, they don't want to come to a Sean James and say, hey, this guy's making stuff like Temptation to John Haynes or Isis Dark Incubus or stuff like my new recent story, which is set during the time of Jim Crow. I call it No Goddess is an Island, about Isis as she's coming to a HBCU in Atlanta, Spelman, and dealing with, again, fantasy from a black point of view. They don't want to have fantasy from a black point of view because these racists only want you to imagine a world where white people are the ones with the power, and they want you to see a world of white people. That's what they want you to see in their media. They only want you to see white people and imagine a world where white people have power. But when it comes down to entertainment, people have gone out here, and again, the money has always been with black projects, and again, they try to push us towards stuff like their one projects, like their Ragtimes, their Color Purples, again, films designed to push a narrative, but black people have always pushed us things forward and pushed the entire film industry forward. I mean, it's the stuff that foundational black Americans made that basically pushed entertainment forward. It was, again, Melvin Van Peebles, Bill Cosby, again, Hudlin Brothers. These are the Spike Lee. They moved the entire film genres forward with their projects, and when Sinners was another step forward. But again, these racists in Hollywood, they don't want to step forward. No, they want to keep things in a place, and they want to have their billionaires control a media space, and under their control, they want to push their everybody's white narrative. But that narrative is falling apart, and these empires are crumbling because they don't want to acknowledge the audience is there or the money that these audiences have, and that's why their entire theater business is falling apart at this point. I mean, you got the guys like these computer nerds like Ellison, again, wanting to go out here and think, oh, we'll get people with streaming, we'll get them to be dependent. No, if people aren't interested in watching what you have to present because they're just not interested, then you're not going to get, you have to go for the audiences that are out there. And again, they're not looking to go for those audiences. They think they can, because they control the media, but they don't understand what you're controlling is a group of depreciating assets that are losing value as we speak. A group of depreciating assets because all those old films in the Warner Brothers catalog or the Paramount catalog, again, we're entering a new century, and in this new century, much of that stuff is going to become old stuff. I mean, we're in a couple of years, basically, we're 4 years away from the 80s being 50 years ago, and these guys aren't critically thinking about the future of entertainment. No, they're trying to hold on to back catalogs that's copyrights are about to expire on a lot of this stuff. I mean, a lot of this stuff is starting to head towards the public domain, and much more of it will head there by the time we hit 2100. Most of the media we basically know is going to hit public domain, and these guys are still trying to control this media of the 20th century, not understanding you need to be focused on creating the media of the 21st century, and the media of the 21st century is basically showing us that there is an audience for movies and TV that's black. I mean, Luke Cage showed us that. I mean, we have the audience here, but sadly, when it comes down to these white folks, again, they don't want to go out here and create that type of media. No, they'd rather hold on to white supremacy and watch Hollywood collapse as an industry. That's what's happening right now. They don't want to go in the direction that basically, again, would save Hollywood because they want to preserve white supremacy, and that's the direction that entertainment is going in. I mean, Sinners showed us where the audience is, shows you where the money is, and again, smart executives in the past would have been out here greenlighting a lot of black material or contacting writers like myself to make films in a similar space, like my vampire novel, Eternal Night. They would have been out here looking to make those type of films, saying, hey, they made that Sinners, let's go get that Eternal Night novel from Sean James and adapt that into a film because it has similar themes. It's a vampire novel that basically features, again, similar themes, so we're going to make this and try to get the same audience. But no, what these guys want to do is continue to have the tunnel vision, focusing only on superhero movies and not the growing audience of black people who are ready to see black people in a world that's much larger and much more unique than the one we got currently at the media right now. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal or the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to see me talk more about the entertainment industry, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App. And if you want to check out any of the fantasy novels that I talked about in this video, like Eternal Night, The Temptation of John Haynes, or Isis, Dark Incubus, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and enter a world of black fantasy and science fiction where black people are in the lead and we're the ones telling our stories about our lives. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.